Good evening, everybody, and welcome along to ORL Tier 2 tonight. Here we're at round number 5 here at the Sakir International Circuit in Bahrain, where it's been holding races since 2004. It's became a night race since the hybrid era started in 2014. My name is Jess, and joining me as per usual, we've got Jacob. How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well, thank you. And yeah, Bahrain, possibly my favourite track in F1, at least as ribbons of tarmac go. I think it's a really, really nice one. So I'm very happy to be here to watch them drive around it for 29 laps, I think it is today.
Yep, it is. We're starting a lot earlier today because obviously we've got the football and obviously the Indy 500, and you guys do not want to miss that. So that's why we're starting at 6:30 instead of 7:45, which is I think it's going to be a relief for most of these drivers. So without further ado, as my game is going really, really loud, so I have to turn it down just a little bit. There we go. We are going to get started with the action, as someone has just had an off in, I think, turn 4 and 5 there, so that's not good. But last week we seen a very good race in Australia, where Muller actually took the race victory. He's not here tonight, which means we've got some people who are willing to take the charge to him and score some extra points. The current championship standings, Andy's leading, and he's not here either. So the next one who is probably leading the championship based off the ones who are here tonight is another guy in the Red Bull, Mr. Anchor, who is in 4th place in the standings at the moment.
Yeah, speaking of Mr. Anchor, he's just received a 5-place grid penalty for a collision with Prostychek on their outlap. So that's not I was about to say, huge opportunity for Mr. Anchor today, right? To take the lead in the championship if he gets a good result. And then he immediately gets himself a 5-place grid penalty before he even starts his first lap in qualifying. How ridiculous and disappointing for him is that? Hopefully he can make amends for it, but that's definitely not the way he was looking to start what ought to have been a really positive weekend for him.
Definitely not. I think Zones had the same amount of pressure when his nearest rivals was basically away, and he was the one who was leading the fight after that. So hopefully Anchor won't feel the same pressure. So we'll stay on board with Mr. Anchor as he goes on this hot lap. So he got past turn 1. This is one of the best overtaking spots on the track. You go past the next DRS straight of turn 4 now, and then you're going to go to the left-hand curve just a little bit, and then to the right for turns 5, 6 and 7. I believe he's going to be one of the first people to set a lap time, but I think there's a few people just ahead of him. We've got an AlphaTauri and a Mercedes as well. Now you're going to go through turn 8. Now this is a really rough service here as you go downhill. You've got to be braking at a similar time as you're turning, which is especially difficult if you've got no ABS, which is what most of these guys have got. Now you're going through to the next DRS straight, which not many people seem to overtake here, but if you get it right between turn 11 and 12, then this could be on to some very interesting racing. And now you're going to avoid the curving on the outside, going towards turn 13. Was quite understeery just there as well. And now you're going to go towards this straight here. You're going to go into 8th gear, going almost at 200 miles per hour. And you're going to go towards 4th gear here to the final DRS straight of the circuit. That was almost an invalidation here from Mr. Anchor, but he comes across the line. He sets the pole time at the moment with a 1:25.0.
Yeah, that's exactly what he needed. He needed to get himself back on track after that initial issue. Zone's actually going above him as well. He is he's 6th in the championship at the moment, but that's 2nd of the people who are actually here, just behind Mr. Anchor. So he has a huge opportunity as well. And with a 1:24.951, almost a 10th clear of Mr. Anchor at the top, that's a very good start for the Polish driver in the Racing Point. Interestingly, Jonathan in the Renault, who's appearing in game as Drip Nathan, but he is actually Jonathan, who we've seen in all the other races thus far this season, was the first one out there. Looked like he was going to be the first one to set a lap time, but actually came back into the pits, so I can only assume that he invalidated his lap. Similar thing might be able to be said for Iceman and Furiosa, who are both headed back into the pits as well. Neither Haas has set a lap time quite yet, but DL Warren's rounding the final corner now, so up towards the line he'll come. And where's he going to put himself? Up in a 6th. Okay, that's a pretty good lap for him. He's been there or thereabouts in the points for most of it, and of course achieved a podium last time out, although that was heavily influenced by everyone around him getting penalties. But nevertheless, he's been a pretty solid driver so far, and up in a 6th, I don't think he'll be too disappointed with that, especially because he's 0.4 of a second clear of Oxygen down in 7th.
Exactly. He finished P3 last week in Australia as well. He benefited from a lot of people's penalties, and Bahrain, you can get away with some penalties, but you got to keep it clean nonetheless. These tyres seem to wear up really quickly, especially with the tyre temperatures as well, obviously because we're in the desert. So they've got to make sure really that the softs, they make it last for a fair chunk of time, because they're going to potentially either do mediums to hards or even do a two-stop strategy here today. There's probably going to be a mixed bag here, as a lot of people seem to be thinking. Now, we've got, I think, a lot more people joining the session, as a lot of people just realised the earlier time. I think I got caught out as well that it was at this time as well, so I'm not the only one, but we've still got a few people yet to say a lap time, and I predicted the pole time to be around about 125, 124, and we've already seen people on that, as Zone's the only one to hit the 124s. I bet you he won't be the only one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll see a lot of track improvement. There always tends to be quite a lot of track improvement here, just at this track in particular. And it's definitely a track that rewards a certain degree of confidence, although a lot of the corners fairly simple, but nevertheless, it always helps to be confident. Capral, in the second of the Hasses, comes across the line, but down in P12 at the moment, well off the pace. I thought the lap looked a bit pedestrian from on board, and I guess I was right, because he's 2.3 seconds off the tail end of the field at the moment. He's going for a second push lap in a row, though, so he might have just backed out of that one halfway through. Taking some weird lines here, but I'm not exactly sure what he's doing in the Haas, the reserve driver standing in today.
Yeah, quite a few reserve drivers as well here today, but this is their chance to really show why they deserve to be in this league, and who knows, we may see him as a full-time spot in the future, as Capral there is one of the best looking liveries on this game. The Haas, it looks pretty nice as well, due to the Rich Energy Drop sponsor, of course, but I think he's got a lot of time to make up with his 129 as well, as I would expect no one to be lower than that, but it is early on in the session as well. As I think one thing I like about this game is you don't have to wait until the end of quali if you just join midway, so that's good news. So I think we've got Brownie and the other guy that's just joined, Leonard. Leonard, I think, is now the highest standing person, I think, who scored really well last week, who's looking to capitalise on Muller and Bastard not being here tonight. As Jonathan, he sets on pole position now with a 124.9, not that far or clear of Zones in second place.
Yeah, Jonathan is someone that we've seen with a lot of pace consistently. He's only managed to finish one race thus far, and that was last race, and at the very end of that race, he picked up a significant amount of front wing damage that went tumbling down the order. So he's yet to have a truly clean race, and a lot of the time he's been very unlucky. Last time out, he was a little desperate. He was veering all over the track, defending very, very hard and battling very hard with Muller at the front. And I think stepping over the line a few times, and I honestly think the front wing damage he received might have been a little bit of karma, but nevertheless, that one he really does have himself to blame for that poor result when he really did have front running pace there. So I'd like to see him calm it down a little bit and just make sure that he gets to the flag in a reasonable time. Of course, starting from pole position will help you with that, because if you start from pole position, there's no one in front of you to crash into. So maybe that will benefit the Renault driver up there sitting on provisional pole, with Zones just starting his second flying lap of the session in the Racing Point, locking up a little bit into turn one, running just a little bit too deep. But that's not compromised him too badly, using all the curb on the exit through turn 3. That's nice. No invalidation there either, using a lot of entry curb into turn 4 as well. Another lockup with the front right tyre, but he gets it turned in nicely. No issues through the S section. How committed is he going to be? Pretty well done there. Left a little bit on the table through that final left-hander there. Down into turn 8. Doesn't quite hit the apex, but that's not usually the end of the world. You can usually get away with that with only losing half a tenth or so. Through turns 9 and 10 now. The toughest bit of the track, and very nicely executed indeed by the Polish driver. Going to be heading down the DRS straight now, one of several DRS straights around here, in towards turn 11, once again using a lot of entry curve, really maximising the space available to him on the track and running right to the exit curve through turn 11 as well, getting the foot planted nicely flat through turn 12, 13, really nicely turned in again, running a little bit wide on exit, and there it goes. That was such a nice lap, but he's invalidated it on the exit of turn 13, and you saw it there.
Yeah, that is a shame, of course. I think a lot of people being caught out there, actually, as well. I think we saw one of the Alpha Tauris do exactly the same. And there goes Zones into the pits. And Anchor was able to capitalise on that. He's got pole position 124.8. The track is evolving. Track temperatures are getting hotter, of course. as well. So the rear ends are going to start to be a little bit tricky as well. But it is the night time. The benefit of Bahrain, it's not going to rain at all in this race, so they don't have to worry about any weather changes in this race. I think it's the only track on this game where you could practice for the dry and not worry about the rain. The only time where it rains is when someone sets it to heavy rain on this game. So that's why quite a few people tend to do well in here, because they don't have to worry about the wet all the time. If someone almost gone off, as I'm on board with Felix right now, but luckily everything is going all right for him for now. But time just seem to be very close, especially with the top 7.
Yeah, no, a lot of really, really close times up there at the very top. Bahrain is a track that everyone knows really well. It's one of the first tracks on the calendar and a nice one to drive. So a lot of people will drive it. A lot of people have done a lot of time trial laps here as well. So I'd expect to see the gaps between drivers smaller relatively here than they would usually be. Mr. Anker currently sitting up in pole position, having put himself a 10th clear of Jonathan at the very top. Of course, he has that 5-place grid penalty, I should say, hanging over his head. So the best he can hope for is P6 on the grid, which is a little bit of a dampener on his finished spirits, I'm sure. And P5, I assume that's Leonard. The game is currently telling me it's Nicholas Latifi. But I'll assume that's Leonard in the Williams. Felix Luneberg only up into 11th in the McLaren. A little bit disappointing for him. He'd expect to be just a little bit higher than that. But yeah, let's stick on board with Leonard now. P2 from last time out on his second push lap of the session as well. Currently just about outstripping his teammate, and that's VSR Syke, also known as VSR Jake, our gracious host for today. But yeah, Leonard down in towards turn 9, really clean, very late turn in, and it runs in just a little bit wide on the exit. That will have not helped him with getting on the power on the exit of turn 10, I should say. Then into turn 11 he comes now. Turns in nicely. A little bit too low on the minimum speed there. Left a little bit on the table, that's for sure. Flat through turn 12, of course, up towards turn 13. He needs to get it right here. Not running too wide on the exit, as we saw from zones earlier in the session. And that's nice. Chris putting himself up into P4 in the Alfa Romeo. But now down towards the final corner of the lap comes Leonard. Running a bit wide there, not really making the apex at all. A little bit pedestrian through there. Across the line he'll come now. And where will this put him? No improvement, I don't believe. So yeah, no, a little bit of a scruffy lap for him.
Yeah, a bit of a shame, but he's only got 5 minutes to go, so he still has a few more laps to make sure he gets the best lap he can possibly be. He only needs to find a few tenths, which will put him on pole position at the moment, but we already know that Mr. Anker and Jonathan is going to improve. If I was Anker, I want to qualify as high as you possibly can, so the deficit for the 5-place grid drop won't be as bad. The lowest you're going to start is P5 or P6. So you don't want to score that low. But at the moment, he's sitting pretty at the moment in first place as well. And we've got Shazoo Chris, who is in 5th place at the moment, who has just got up a little bit as well. They're not far behind too as well. I think only 2 people that are out of the mark we're expecting to be, and that's Nurtex and in the Ferrari and Capel in the Haas. They've got a lot of work to do if they want to climb up the order. Let's see what the Haas driver does then as he comes towards the final corner. I think he's going to go into the pits as he's running out of fuel. Nope, he's not. He's going to have a go anyway. It's a 1:28.0, so he improves, but he's still in last place.
You were seeing steady improvement from Capel, getting closer to the back of the field. Oh, Zones with a major moment there, having to back out of his lap entirely as he lost it on the exit of turn 14. He was on another push lap. He'd set a purple middle sector. That's going to be another disappointing lap for the Racing Point driver. He's only got one more opportunity now as the clock's ticking down. After a great first lap of the session, the pressure seems to be getting to him. One invalidation and one major mistake, forcing him to back out of 2 laps in succession. And he's, going to be feeling the nerves just a little bit now.
Yep, he is. That's quite a lot of these drivers as well. Interestingly, that not many people are going for the medium tyres then. I'm guessing they're all going for the aggressive strategy. But a lot of people have raced in here in the past, obviously, for other leagues as well for their evaluation races. So a lot of people use this track already in that sense. But that probably the main reason why the pressure is so high as well, because they've raced so many times before. Nurtex has invalidated again. He has to go into the pits really quickly because otherwise he's not going to get in a quick lap, and you don't want to be starting that low up the grid. But again, we've seen people climb all the way from 16th down to the high end of the grid in both tiers before. So it's not impossible for Nurtex really. So hopefully he has enough tyres to start his final lap as we've got 2 minutes left to go. Let us know in the chat, guys, on who you think is going to get pole position. We've got Oxygen as well in 9th place, looking to improve on his lap. I doubt he's going to get one final lap in, so if I was him, actually no, he's running out of fuel, so if I was him, I would have put in an extra more fuel so he could set one final lap, but he can't do that, I'm afraid. So it is getting towards crunch time now, Jacob. 2 minutes to go. It's going to be a tough one to see who's going to get pole position.
Yeah, no, a lot of them just waiting out in the pits, waiting for the very last moment to get the maximum track improvement. But actually, there hasn't been that much of a ramping up in pace as I would have expected. Leonard invalidates his lap, running wide through turn 4. He just started his push lap, and at the end of sector 1, he's already thrown it away. He needs to get back around the circuit again. He'll just back off from this lap. That's the good thing about invalidating your lap early, is that you haven't taken that much out of the tyres by that point in the lap. So you can always just back out and go again, and that is what he's going to do. Currently sitting down in 7th position. Syke, his teammate, having just put himself ahead. But we've seen a lot of kind of micro improvements from these guys, but no one's really had a stonking second lap compared to their first lap. Will be interesting to see whether anyone has a stonking third lap here. Felix Luneberg also has invalidated his lap time. Iceman getting a nice slipstream off of him, currently sitting down in 13th position. That's Oxygen retiring from the session. No higher than P9 for the AlphaTauri. Iceman pushing his Mirage also retiring from the session while on just in the pits, actually leaving the pits and then retires from the session. I think he just miscalculated the amount of time he needed to leave himself before leaving the pits, and he's had to retire. So down in P10 for him, a little bit disappointing, I'm sure. Iceman pushing now in the Red Bull, running just a little bit wide again through turn 10. That is, of course, the toughest part of this track, and I've seen it catch out several drivers so far this qualifying session. Through turn 11, it's a little bit untidy, but it gets the job done. I don't think he'll have lost too much time there. Here we go now, turning in for turn 13. Does a decent job there in the Red Bull. Once again, kind of unremarkable, but fine, as it looks like DL Warren's having to retire from the session as well, and Iceman seems to have backed out of it, so he evidently wasn't improving by enough either. A lot of them really, really struggling out here at the moment.
Yeah, they are, and it's not long to go for some of these guys. As Mr. Anker crosses the line to start his final lap, so is Jonathan. Zones as well in P3 as well. He's on his final lap. He's purple sector 1-2, so he's going even quicker than he was in the past couple of laps, and he only needs to find a few tenths, but there was a little bit of a lock-up going into turn 7, so hopefully he can find all he needs going into sector 3. Get owned as well in 4th place in the Mercedes. He's hoping to find some more time as well. I'm just seeing who's going to be the furthest on the lap. We got Syke in the Williams. No, he's just further down. We got his teammate, though, Leonard. He was P2 last week. What can he do this week as he comes across the line? He only stays in P6. Zones is looking really quick. A tenth quicker than his purple sector 2 again. He's a man on a mission. We know Mr. Anker's not going to get pole today, but he can use this as motivation to say, you know what, I could possibly get pole as well. We got the Alfa Romeo just ahead of him, about to cross the line as well. I do believe that was Chris. He gets P3. That's a really good lap for him. What about Zones? What can he do? Can he snatch pole position of Anker? Yes, he can. That is a 124.5, an incredible lap. What about Jonathan? Not quite, but he still beats Anker in P2. I'm seeing what Get Own could do. He's about to cross the line as well. Can he find a couple of attempts? Only P4. Miss Syke is about to cross the final few corners now. I think he's the only man that can beat him. We got Nurtex on a lap as well, but it doesn't look like he's going to improve. He's just behind, actually, Jake as well. So Syke comes across the line, and it is P4. Not a bad lap from him so far, and that's it then. So Zones, by a dominant fashion, is on pole for the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Yeah, and that was that stonking third lap I was looking for earlier. The second laps were a little bit disappointing, but 3.5 tenths of improvement on the third lap is really nice to see. And Zones putting himself up into P1, not letting that pressure that I mentioned was there get to him. And actually, I hadn't realized Get Owned also with a 5-place grid penalty. So the guys that qualified in second and third, they were the guys that hit each other, of course. So they have those 5-place grid penalties, I should say. So that will mean that Syke, Jake, of course, will be starting on the front row in second.
I think that's going to help him really as well. He said to me that he likes Bahrain as well, and I'm looking at the rest of your results before they come off on the screen as well. Get Owned as well is going to start pretty high up. And don't forget Chris too. These are the guys that are going to be loving it. Obviously, Chris hasn't raced with us much before, so he's going to enjoy this race, that's for sure. Now, as we're about to start this race, this could change things up massively. And I think Zones might have a bit of pressure from Jake, but Jake, we know, is quite quick too. But we see Zones in Austria liked being up there near the top, but the pressure just got to him and he spun quite a bit. This is the chance to see what he really can do to catch up to the likes of Andy in the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And the pressure was getting to him a little bit in qualifying, of course, with those 2 out of his 4 laps having to be aborted, particularly in the middle of the session. I was really getting nervous for him, but he really pulled it out of the bag with the final lap of the session. So the Polish driver is on pole position, which is something that's always lovely to see. In the Racing Point, of course, he will be leading the way with the Williams of Syke alongside him. I think, who will that be in third? Will it be Jonathan in third? No, okay, Get Owned, I believe, in third. Yep, and then Chris, then Jonathan, then Felix Luneberg. Hold on, this is not the order I was necessarily expecting. Mr. Anchor down in P6. DL Warren, or in P7, sorry, DL Warren starting in 8th, Oxygen in 9th, Mirage rounding out the top 10, and then below the top 10, we've got all the guys who had the free choice of tyres, and every single one of them opting to start on mediums. And interestingly, Mirage, who I'm pretty sure qualified on soft tyres in the top 10, has gone to medium tyres. So I don't know if that's legal. I don't know if he's going to be facing a disqualification for this. I'm also not sure quite why Leonard is right at the back of the grid. I don't know if that's showing as that for you as well.
Yeah, it is showing. This lobby is very weird right now, so I wonder if they'll have to restart. I will have to double check that. It is quite interesting, but hopefully it may not be the same for us as for the drivers. So that could be interesting. So we're either going to have a medium to hard strategy, which you could pick lap 13 to 15, or we're going to have soft, mediums today. And I don't think we're getting much complaints actually from the drivers, so I'm guessing we're going. I think not many people were paying attention to the grid order, so that's probably why. So I think it looks like we're going to be going with the race, but I thought Leonard qualified higher than 17th, but there we go.
Yeah, I also thought that Get Owned had a 5-place grid penalty, but he's had a 1-place grid penalty for some reason, so I don't really understand what's quite happened there for the Mercedes either, but he won't be complaining, I'm sure. Chris and Jonathan might, as they've been screwed out of a couple of positions. Same for Felix Luneberg up in 6th. And yeah, it's all not quite as we expected it was going to be on the basis of qualifying, but nevertheless, hopefully that's not going to bode ill for the lobby itself. Hopefully once we get into the race, everything will be okay. No desynchronization issues or anything like that, we pray, as they line up now on the grid with Capral and Leonard rounding it out there in 16th and 17th positions.
Here we go then. Hopefully that everyone will go into their positions quite comfortably in the start. Otherwise it could get chaotic, but we'll have to wait and see. 29 laps await our drivers. We are not on lap 2 as we're about to get the 5 red lights. We've got Zones on the right. We've got Jake on the left. Who's going to get the clean getaway? And I think we got the host glitch, as I think Jake saw the lights before everybody else. But we're going to see as they all make it through into turn number 1. Jake having a good start. And Zone's trying to get the cutback, which he does very, very nicely indeed. So I think Jake did the right thing, let him in through there. But he's under pressure with Get Owned and Jonathan as well. I think everyone seems to be making it cleanly through turn 1 so far. Leonard all the way up into 40. Leonard might have got a penalty. That's probably why he was up high as well. Here comes Mr. Anchor trying to go through the right-hand side of Felix then into turn 5, 6 and 7. Felix getting a better run here. Going through into turn 7 as Anchor had a little bit of an off there. Let's see if he can go into the right-hand curve just a little bit. Ooh, a little bit of touch in there. That's not what you want, but I think Mr. Anchor's going to get the better edge of him there. But here comes Felix with the comeback here as he goes towards turn 9 and 10. The heavy braking zone here as they both go side by side, heading into the DRS zone. The overtake button is on. We can see that Mr. Anchor is gaining on him now. He doesn't want to let this position throw him a little bit. There he goes, a swooping move there. He's up into P5.
Yeah, nice move. He was shown the door through turn 10, had to run on the curb under traction, and that really compromises your traction a lot, but he just went back into the slipstream of the McLaren up ahead, was patient, and made the move into turn 11. So nice stuff from Mr. Anker. A lot of battling going on as Sykes actually made his way back up into P2 over the course of that initial lap as well. Chris with a poor start, got really shuffled out in the first few corners, and one of the most impressive things I've seen, Iceman got 3 warnings and therefore picked up a 3-second penalty over the course of the first 3 corners. So incredibly impressive of him to be able to do that, but not very good news for him, that's for sure. A couple of guys into the pits, and I've actually seen DRS being enabled. I'm not really sure what that's all about. There's a Ghost Williams driving around here in front of Iceman as well. So I think a lot might be having some of the same issues. Yeah, a few ghosts. Mr. Anker's Ghost being shown up towards the top. DL Warren being shown in the pits. There's the pit graphic coming up yet again. This is not going to plan.
Nope, it's not. We're not able to see what happens. All we know is Zones is leading and Syke is in P2, but Zones is able to pull up a good gap to him and Syke a second, so he's going to be out of DRS zone, Jake is, so he's not going to gain as much, whereas Get Owned, he's going to be gaining quite a bit. He's 6 tenths now, Nathan 5 tenths. Really though, around this track, you've got to be around 3 tenths or 2 tenths behind in order to have a huge advantage to try and overtake them, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult with a lot of people in DRS range.
Interestingly, Mr. Anker actually really not keeping pace with the front 4 cars at the moment. He's having to think about Chris behind him. But he's dropped 2 seconds away from Jonathan up in P4. At least I believe that's real, that he's dropped 2 seconds away. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. So a little bit of a disappointing start to the race for Mr. Anker after gaining that 1 position, or gaining those 2 positions, I should say, on the opening lap. He then doesn't seem to quite have the pace. I wonder if he picked up a tiny bit of front wing damage. I've not been able to see anything. No, his front wing looks perfectly intact to me, so just lacking a bit of pace compared to the front runners. And speaking of the front runners, Zones gapping Syke in P2 as well. So good start to the race for the Polish driver. Will he take too much out of his tyres, though? That's the thing, because tyre wear can be very, very critical around here. So maybe he's just pushing a little bit harder than the guys behind at the moment.
Yeah, I think so as well. That's potentially a little bit of a lock-up for Get Owned as well going into turn 7. But he's gained quite a bit of straight line speed on his side going into P2, so he could get him here as well. Let's see if he's a few tenths behind. No, only 5 tenths behind as well. So not many people aiming to go for moves at the moment, because we could see the first pit stop potentially happening pretty soon. It's crucial that you're going to be ahead of them in the pit stops, really, because you can't make a one-stop work if you do soft to mediums or even soft to hard. Soft, medium is potentially the way to go, but I think the ones on the mediums, they have the advantage. They could go mediums to hard. We got I think that's how you say it. He's got the best strategy in out the top. Oh, someone spun. Who's that? That is actually him. I think I just commentated cursing. He had one of the best strategy. He was in P8, and now he's spun, and he caused the safety car. Wow.
Yeah, the best strategy in the race is to spin out, apparently, on the exit of turn 13 there. That's not good news for Hitton whatsoever. He's lost the entirety of his front wing, so he will be heading into the pits, and that is the safety car coming out, so a lot of drivers heading into the pits. Syke didn't pit, nor did Ghetto, and Mirage also not pitting. Same could be said for Leonard and Oxygen, so they're all rolling the dice here. A couple of them are, of course, on the medium tyres, but for Syke and Ghetto, that's a very big gamble that they've just made.
Yeah, they have, because for some of these guys, they could train into a more two-stop strategy, more conservative at the start, and then possibly go on to the softs at the end of the Grand Prix. And that is exactly what the likes of Chris and Felix have done. Mr. Anker, he's on the mediums, as well as Jonathan, as well as a few people dropping way down the order. Zone's actually in 7th. He's opted for that as well. I wonder what tyres he's going to go on in the end. He has the flexibility, of course, because you have a choice of what compound you use. As long as you used one different compound, then you should be fine. So that is what Zones has opted to do, and so is Mr. Anker too. So it's interesting to see a few people that pitted on the mediums and a few people pitted on the hards. I thought they would go for the same thing, but it'll be interesting to see which one will be the best strategy out of those two today, or would it be the likes of Syke and Get Owned that decide to stay out on those soft tyres, as well as Oxygen would be the best strat? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we will indeed. I don't know whether you can make it to the end from here on hard tires. It will be a gargantuan effort if you can. I'm pretty certain it's nigh on impossible, if not actually impossible, to get to the end on the medium tires. So Mr. Anker's decision to go onto medium tires when he pitted, compared to everyone else choosing the hard tires, is a little bit suspect to me. We'll have to wait and see whether that will work for him, but in my mind that's committing him to a two-stop strategy here, unless he can pull off some kind of absolute miracle. Iceman and Prostychek, they both started on the medium tires, I do believe, so they've now come onto the soft tires rather than going onto the hards. So they're definitely committing to a two-stop race as well, and Psych and Oxygen both into the pits. This is a disaster for the Williams driver who was running in P2. He didn't pit as soon as the safety car came out. He's pit a lap later when everyone is trained up behind the safety car itself. He's going to fall all the way down the order. He might even lose out to Hittinen, whose incident caused the safety car in the first place. And that is not good news for VSR Psych whatsoever. Getone sticking to his guns, staying out there on the soft tires, but he is now the only one.
Yeah, he's the only one right now. So I thought Psych would have stayed out, but maybe his tyres were a bit on the temperature hot side, I would say. But you know, I think he didn't see that his rival of Zones actually pitted, and he thought that he was going to be jumping the guns a little bit, but he didn't. So he's got a lot of work to do, of course, but he's going to hope that the guys around him aren't going to struggle, and he's quite quick around here, so let's see if he can get some moves done and do a Verstappen-esque across the field, as I think everyone has caught up to the safety car, so the safety car will come in this lap. I think this is the first time where we've seen a safety car being caused on this game for a while without someone retiring. That is a first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting that it's come out, though, because it's really thrown a spanner in the works for a lot of these drivers. I think if I'm Leonard, I'm feeling really good right now. In the Williams, in P3, on the medium tires, so he can still just do mediums to hards. He's got he's got Zones 2 places behind him, which is the big caveat here. But he's on 4-lap old mediums, which I'd take over 0-lap old hards, I think, at this stage of the race. And yeah, so I think he'll be feeling pretty good, better than Getone, who's stuck on those soft tires out of the front. And I think he's definitely got the pace to get past Mirage as well. Leonard, I think, is just the quicker driver. Specifically around here, he's definitely the quicker driver, as we saw in qualifying. And having started at the very back of the grid to be up in P3 and in with a shout of pulling off a one-stop here and having track position over everyone else who's probably all going to have to pit again, I think, depending on whether the hard tires can make it to the end. He might be in with a really good shot here as we get back underway now with the safety car heading into the pits.
Here we go. Here comes Getone, who had a very good start. But look at Leonard. He's had a brilliant start. He's going to try and get the both of them. He almost made contact with Mirage, actually, going into turn 1. But that's allowed Getone to pull away just a little bit squirmish for some of the people. As we did see a Haas car not having the best start into turn 1 there. But he's under pressure from Iceman and Chris as well. Capal's now up into 8th place, who's the only other person who also stayed out on those mediums. Mirage, Leonard and DMR also doing the same now. A lot of people taking a lot of risks today, and they have been warned not to play it too dirty, I would say. But meanwhile, Zones has got past both Nathan and Jonathan, has Zones up into P4 on those hard tyres. It's proving to work out very well for Zones, actually. He's been warming up his tyres on the safety car, but the ones he's still yet to pit, they'll have to warm those hards quite considerably, and it's going to be a lot tricky on those when you speed up on the car. But here comes Jake going into pretty much turn 11. He's going to try and make a move on the left-hand side of Felix then, going in into the tricky left-hander. It's going to be a swerving move, so it'll be great if Jake can actually get this move done, which he does.
Yeah, lovely move there from the Williams driver. Same can't be said for Leonard into turn 1. I don't think it was any of his fault, but he really backed out of that because Mirage actually did make contact with him when Mirage himself pulled out to try and take the lead of the race from Getone, as looks like Felix Lundberg and Prostychek. DL Warren falling down to the back of the order. He's had a bit of a moment in the Haas coming out of the final corner. His teammate in the other Haas, Capral, is falling down the order rapidly. He's been a bit of a moving chicane on this safety car restart for a lot of the potential front runners here. Meanwhile, back up towards the front, Mr. Anker and Jonathan battling. Mr. Anker taking the position away up into P5. He goes Furiosus, losing positions hand over fist as well on those older medium tires. in the Ferrari. However, Leonard and Mirage are hanging on. So some of these guys must have cooked their medium tyres in the early stages of the race a lot more than the others. And Mirage and Leonard are those that have benefited a little more from it. Of course, Ghetto's not really with the pace to get away from anyone at the moment on those old soft tyres now. And that's great news for Zone, sitting in P4, just sitting in that train. He'll be feeling really good about himself at the moment.
I think he would as well. And don't forget the tyre wear as well. Obviously, these setups in an F1 2020 is more geared to having multiple tyre pressures for all four tyres, not just setting it for the front and the rears. And that could be very tricky if you're the one who's not very technical with that kind of thing. So I'm wondering if those guys spend a bit more time on that bit of the setup this week, just fine-tuning it a little bit. And it's going to make a difference for some of these drivers. Some of these can push these tyres for a bit longer. Some of these guys find it a little bit more tricky, as we're seeing some more fields on the midfield. Jake trying to make another move this time, going in into the final corner. And who said you can't overtake there? Well, Syke said you can, and he's proving us wrong. But we can see Barucha's trying to go for a move as DRS is enabled then for this lap. Let's see if Syke can try and defend going into turn one. He's finding it a little bit tricky, actually, and he's going to try and get past him. It'll be great if he gets this done, actually, which he does. He's starting to make ground on most of these drivers. Don't forget, Mirage and Leonard still will have to pit. Iceman will definitely need to pit. So will Mr. Anchor as well. Syke is going to do all he can to try and get these to the end, but you can't push too hard out there. But he's doing a good job at least.
Yeah, I think we saw why people don't overtake into the final corner very often there, as Furiosa's actually got a run back on Syke into turn one, challenged him there. Cost Syke a bit of time, but Furiosa's really, really struggling on those medium tyres in the Ferrari, as he's gone down from being fourth in the order down into 12th in the matter of 2 laps. So really not having a good time out there at the moment. Mr. Anchor challenging Zones. Of course, he's on a step softer tyre than Zones, and both of them get incredibly deep into turn 11. That was a game of chicken that both of them lost. But Zones holding on to the position in the end, as Mr. Anchor just completely ran out of road on his own. But even if he hadn't, Zones would have showed him the door comfortably. Mirage struggling now on his medium tyres. Looks like Leonard has held on to his mediums a lot better than everyone else who started on those medium tyres. We've seen Furiosa and Cabral falling down the order. Mirage looking like he's losing some pace to the cars behind, as well as Get Owned still actually gapping out at the front. So Leonard needs to get past sooner rather than later, and he does it well before turn one. He's already got the move completed. Zones up the inside of the Renault as well, trying to claim P3 so that he doesn't get stuck behind that Renault, and that's an important move for him because he can keep Leonard well within his sights. And Mr. Anchor now taking advantage of the fact that Mirage has been put offline by all this battling, meaning that the Red Bull can slither his way up into fourth as well, and Mirage down from second to fifth.
Yeah, a shame there, but that's due to his tyres, I think, not being in good temperatures right now. His rears must be stoking hot at the moment, as Nurtex is out of the session. I think we could go on board, actually, and we got another safety car.
Yeah, Nurtex seems to have lost it on the exit of turn 4 somehow. I don't know if it was collision with another driver. He's a long way out of turn 4. To have an incident there is very strange. So he might have had a little bit of a contact with another driver. Nevertheless, the end result is the same. He's out of the race, and we have another safety car. So what is everyone going to do about this one? That's very interesting. This poses one major question for Leonard and for Mirage. Get Owned, I'm certain, will come into the pits because he's about to have to come into the pits anyway. But what will Leonard do in the Williams in P2?
That would be interesting. Would he go onto the hards earlier, potentially, with that undercut and see if he can get it to the end of the Grand Prix? That could be doable, I guess, but well, I think Get Owned will probably be the ones who will be the train, pretty much. And Leonard is following what Get Owned is doing. He's in the pits as well, and I'm seeing, yep, he's pinged. Mr. Anchor stays out, though, on his medium tyres. He's quite happy with that, as Zones is going to be leading the field away as the safety car is, I think, is waiting, in turn 4 by the looks of things. Yes, I do see the safety car, so Zones is going to be picking up that as well. The only one in the top 10 on those medium tyres, though, is Mr. Anchor. Everyone that was on those soft tyres, though, I couldn't see who they were. They decided to ditch them and go on to the hard tyres. So for the majority of the peak runners, they're going to make it to the end. But Mr. Anchor will need to stop again. Almost Felix will need to stop again. But we'll see if these can make it to the end as well. ferocious on the softs though. I wonder if he was meant to do that.
Yeah, I don't exactly know what that decision was from Furiosus, but it's not the right one. I can tell you that for nothing. But yeah, Iceman and Prostychek, they both pitted on that first safety car and went onto soft tires. They've both gone and got rid of those onto the hard tires, so almost the whole field on those hard tires. Now, Mr. Anker not pitting is interesting. I don't know if he thinks he can make it onto the make it to the end of the race on those medium tires. We saw huge drop off for some of the drivers on their mediums by the time they got to 8 laps old. So Mr. Anker really rolling the dice here now, and that initial decision to pit onto the mediums is looking worse by the minute. He definitely had the pace over zones, though, so he might be able to get past him into turn 1 and maybe gap him for a couple of laps, but it's not going to be long before the hard tyres become the tyres to be on as Mr. Ankers start to wear out more and more. And keeping your tyres in the temperature window is so critical around here because, of course, it's a hot place, and you can really heat up the tyres if you haven't taken some of the pressure out of them. So that might well show which drivers have done that with their setup and which ones have gone for a more qualifying-based setup. But yeah, nevertheless, it's looking very good for zones at the moment.
Yeah, it is. He's leading the pack as well. It's not going to be that long before the safety car comes in, as I think it's going to be in for one final lap, and then that's pretty much it, to be honest, as everyone is starting that train. But, you know, most of the people now on their hards, they could just focus on getting to the end now and not getting involved in too many accidents as well. I think Syke was lucky as well on those hards, but again, he's going to be under pressure being in puncher territory. But maybe some of these guys have done it before. If they race in Bahrain, they may have realised how much the hards were into use. So, or maybe they just go for the gamble, because for some races, you got to take gambles from time to time. And if it works, then great, you're probably going to be the hero. And if it doesn't work, then at least you know what to improve for next time. It's a brand new game. As some of the strategies haven't been worked out for some of these drivers yet, neither has setup. So maybe they won't figure it as much unless they've done some more races on this game. So it'll probably take a little bit further into the game cycle to figure out that, but we'll have to wait and see as they're about to start. Well, I think potentially one final lap on the safety car and zones. He's got a lot of work to do to make sure he keeps Anker and Jonathan behind him.
Yeah, I think he needs to not battle Anker too hard, though. I think if Mr. Anker wants to go past, I think zones should just let him past, if he clearly has the pace over him, that is. That's a big if. But I think that, well, it'll be interesting to see whether Zones is of the same opinion. But if Mr. Anker can't get to the end, as we suspect, and I'm pretty sure he can't, Zones should just let him pass. Because if he doesn't let him pass, if he chooses to battle with him, that could leave himself vulnerable to Jonathan behind, who's a much bigger threat at this stage of the race. And Chris and Syke as well behind. They've got some pace as well. Let's not forget that. Chris has been quietly plugging away, currently up in P4 at the moment in the Alpha after a poor opening lap. So decent recovery from him thus far. Get-Owned and Leonard towards the bottom end of the top 10 at the moment, but with that critical age difference on their hard tyres. 6 laps old for everyone ahead of them, and they are just on 0 lap old hard tyres for the time being. They'll almost, well no, they will be able to get to the end. There's no doubt about that. And the others, there's a big question mark over them. So Leonard and Get-Owned might not be out of contention just yet, particularly if everyone in front has to pit.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to wait and see. So the safety car has come in, and it'll be up to Zones to really floor it. But he didn't leave it too long to floor it, to be honest. And really got to help him. Mr. Anker, I think, has been caught off guard there, going towards turn 1. And I think Jonathan has had a good start as well. Jake is going to make up for lots of time. So is Chris. Dylan has had an almighty start into turn 1. He's already going to make not just past one, but 2 cars. He's going side by side with Jake now, going into turn 4. It'll be amazing if we get this work. Jake is going to try and go onto the right-hand side into turn 4. A little bit of lock-up from both of them. But Jake's doing very well to fight this battle. He's not letting Dylan being past that easy, but Dylan goes past him anyway. But Dylan, he has made quite a few positions in this race. He's gained 3 positions since the very start. He's on a charge here. Don't forget, he could try. He's on a similar strategy to Syke, so he doesn't want to push that hard because otherwise he'll be in punch territory too. But Dylan is already on the hunt to get past Chris now, and I won't be surprised if he does.
Yeah, Dylan with a huge lunge around the outside into turn 1. That's really somewhere where you can get away with that because people take the very, very tight line indeed most of the time through that corner. But it's possible to hang it out around the outside because you get the inside for turn 2, of course, as well. And being on the inside there really is the only place to be. And because everyone takes the inside line so quickly, there's so much space for you to really be late on the brakes if you want to around the outside, and that's exactly what we saw. It looks like Furiosus has spun through turn 14, so his decision to go onto the soft tyres, he really needed to make hay while he was on those soft tyres and while they were still fresh, but spinning out will definitely not help him with that whatsoever. And Zones looks comfortable out front at the moment. He had an excellent restart, really gapping Mr. Anker initially as Phoenix Luneberg retires from the session. He's got a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, so he's just decided he just heads straight into the pits. I assume he picked up damage. Maybe he was involved in the incident with Furiosus, who's also headed into the pit lane and also picked up a 5-second time penalty. I think maybe Felix Luneberg got some damage in a crash with Furiosus. That's my guess as to what's happened down there. And as a result, the McLaren driver has retired, thrown in the towel.
Yeah, that is a shame, of course, but he's done the right thing for retiring in the pit lane because you won't cause that many glitches in the game, and if they are caught retiring on track, then there may be a few repercussions at going into the stewards, but luckily Felix has decided enough's enough. Well, at least he can enjoy what's coming up in the next half an hour or so, which we're going to watch after this potentially, either the football or the Indy 500, but there's still many laps to go of this race, so make sure you don't tune out of this one. This has been a cracker race so far from Zones. I'm sure he's going to be closing up to Andy in the championship sooner or later. I think he's one who had less pressure coming into this. The one that had the most pressure was Mr. Anker and Lennon. Lennon's still dropping up a bit, but he's going to hope that everyone's tyres fall off the cliff. I think Anker's dropping off a little bit, so maybe those tyres are not the best condition right now. That's why Zones is pulling away right now. He can get to the end. DRS is enabled though. He's about 4 tenths behind Zones. Turn 1 could be his best opportunity to get past, but he doesn't get past, but potentially he can do it in going into turn 4 coming up soon as well. Not much overtake that he's going to use because he's on 32% of ERS. He's used quite a lot in the last few laps going into the safety car on the restart, so he's not going to get past there as well. Chris going to try and get past Jonathan, and he doesn't get past nonetheless. I think the only battle we're going to see is between Lennon and Getone as well. We got Heinen and Oxygen too, so I think we'll see more battles in the midfield, but don't forget, Getone and Lennon, they don't have to pit again, and their tyres are going to be in steam condition, so we could see this as a battle for the win here if these guys fall off the cliff.
Yeah, if everyone else's tyres go bang, then it's Getone and Leonard who will be at the front of this race. And that's definitely something which could possibly happen. This is a very edgy circuit on tyre wear at the best of times, or it has been in recent years. And it's a real rear tyre monster, this circuit, or it certainly can be if you don't drive it correctly. Zones starting to look like Mr. Anker's getting the pace over him over the course of this last lap. I think Zones has been a bit off pace on this lap. Mr. Anker's really pushing up to the back of him. Now, Jonathan doesn't have the pace to live with them. Either that or he's conserving his tyres. Either way, he's falling back 1.7 seconds from the front two at the moment. Zone's really pushing as he locks up into the final corner. That will compromise him just a tiny bit on the exit. And as a result of that, Mr. Anker is going to breeze past him here. No hope of defence for the Racing Point driver. He'll just have to slot back into P2 for the time being. He can try and make a move though as Mr. Anker goes wide through turn 1. That will compromise him through turns 2 and 3. Can Zones get the run with DRS back up to turn 4? No, Mr. Anker with those medium tyres looks like he just has a lot more grip under traction at the moment, even though they're 10 laps old. So Mr. Anker up into P1 for the time being.
Well, at least Mr. Anker can focus on saving his tyres once he finds a suitable gap between himself and Zones, but he's got to try and keep Zones behind him first before he can do that, but he wants to do it sooner rather than later, and he's done a really good job for that. We're starting to see more penalties come into the fold here, with Mirage Puto getting a 3-second time penalty as well. That could affect his chances of potentially getting points if he can get past Frosty in the Alfa Romeo. I haven't talked much about him so far as he's gained. I think he's stayed where he is down in 12th, not getting involved in too many battles, but he's staying quite out there at the moment, and sometimes that's where you want to be at this stage. We're still seeing some nice battles between Oxygen and Garen. Just look at that train from P7 downwards. This is going to be absolutely insane if these guys get this right as well. I think they're 2 tenths now. Surely someone is going to jump the gun and get the move, and firstly is Oxygen on Get Owned.
Yeah, I mean, Getoned and Leonard need to get past Hittonen and Oxygen. Not only are they just faster drivers around here, I believe, based on qualifying at least, they definitely were a lot further ahead of Hittonen and Oxygen in terms of their lap times, but they've also got the fresher tyres. So they really, really need to be getting past as soon as they possibly can, because every lap they get held up is really compromising them and ruining some of the advantage they have of having fresher tyres than everyone up ahead. That's a good, critical move there for Getoned, but Leonard just isn't doing it. He's still stuck in P10, behind Oxygen, behind Hittonen. Being at the back of a train, it's always harder to overtake than when you're at the front, but actually Getoned managed to make his way past Oxygen on one lap, past Hittonen on the next, and Leonard is struggling down there in P10 at the moment. Getoned will be getting away from him, and Leonard needs to keep up with the Mercedes driver because he's the one he's really racing here today.
Yep, he is really. I think Leonard is going to find it very tricky to get past. I've done a few my teams here, and I find it quite difficult to get past people that are on different strategies, and sometimes they could be caught up in more mistakes. But here comes Leonard with a better exit into turn 10, but again, just not quite enough. Both on similar ERS as well. That is going to be Getoned saying thank you very much. If Leonard can't get past, that's going to increase the gap just a little bit more, and he already is out of DRS range. Hiron is out of DRS range of Getoned. So Getoned has done the right thing now. He is, I think, has the edge out of everybody from P7 downwards. That train is starting to decrease from now. But let's see if Leonard could put the pressure on Oxygen. Well, I think Oxygen is struggling, but we know Leonard is faster. We got Zones and Anchor going for a move then, going into turn 1. This is for the lead for now. Let's see if Zones can get the comeback. He needs to take the win today. He does for now get P1 on track, but I think Mr. Anchor is going to get the DRS due to the detection zone. He's gaining. He's running out of DRS though, so this might hinder him going into towards turn 4, but I think that does hinder him for Anchor as he stays P2, but can't afford to push too much. His tyres must be on the brim right now. I wonder if he's gonna be around the 60-70% range. Maybe he'll just get it to the end and pull off a miracle, but we may see a Britain 2020 coming on our list if Anchor doesn't get a move on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very concerned for Mr. Anchor's tyres at the moment. I'm also quite concerned for Zones, Jonathan, Chris, etc., their tyres as well. The Mr. Anchors are going to be that much worse, being a step softer and the same age as all the others. And Zones looks like he's starting to gap Mr. Anchor just a little bit, up to 0.7 of a second. That's bigger than the gap has been between these two since that second safety car came back into the pits. So Zone's going to be feeling pretty good about starting to build that gap now. Interestingly, Getoned is eating into the gap to psych up ahead a little bit, but not very much. So 6-lap-old hards having a similar pace to 11-lap-old hards at the moment. That once you get to the point of the race where it's more like 15-lap-old hards to 10-lap-old hards, then you're probably going to see a bigger difference in pace between these two, and that's when Getoned is going to be able to make moves. Oxygen has been dispatched now by Leonard, who's looking to try and get Hittonen into turn 1 as well. Hittonen's aware of it. He goes defensive already well before they get to the corner, but around the outside goes Leonard. Late on the brakes, deep into the corner, and he gets it done nicely. Can he hold on to the position up towards turn 4 though, because Hittonen is right on his tail and has DRS as well? Doesn't look like he's going to be close enough, so that's up into P8 for Leonard, and that's exactly what he needed.
But I think it was too little too late for Leonard in trying to get that move done, really, because already 2.2 seconds behind Getoned. He was around about a few tenths behind him before it happened, before the pit stop, so I'll be worried if I was him, but I think that's not going to do his tyres any good. So maybe Getoned has a bit more life in his tyres now due to the fact that he has more cleaner air. We got a yellow flag in sector 2, and I do believe that's heading towards turn 7, and that's Mirage actually. I think has had an off. Yes, it has. So towards turn 7 actually, yeah, it is. So there he goes off. Unfortunate right now as we got another yellow flag as well. I think, yeah, he's still going very slow. Yeah, it is him as well. So, yeah, not quite the start he would have hoped, as he was potentially in the battle for the win too. But, you know, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And he's going to take a look back and say what went wrong for him.
Yeah, what you're seeing here with Mirage spinning about 4 times in a row there is the heated rear tyres. if they overheat, it's so hard to even put down the traction, even in like 4th gear. It can be really, really tough under traction, and he was just overestimating his car and underestimating the extent to which his tires were going to complain when he tried to put the power down, and because of that, he spun about 4 times in a row in that Renault, and because of that, he's 12.5 seconds behind Capral, down in P14 at the moment. That's Iceman picking up a penalty down in P11 for him, the Red Bull driver, not having the best race of his career today thus far. Mr. Anker still sticking within DRS range of zones and not falling into DRS range of Jonathan either quite yet, but it's 1.1 seconds between the Renault and the Red Bull, and Jonathan will begin wanting to get closer and closer to Mr. Anker because he needs to keep zones in sight as well. If Mr. Anker's tyres are dropping off the cliff, which I think they're just about to do now, then Jonathan really needs to get past him. It's just like what we're seeing down the order with Leonard and Getone. The fact that Leonard has now 2.8 seconds to make up to Getone up ahead is entirely because Getone was that much better at getting through the traffic. And because of zones being ahead of Mr. Anker, he has that buffer between himself and Jonathan will want to, he'll be still thinking that the win is possible for him here today. I don't think he has the pace of Getone regardless, but if he wants to challenge at all, he needs to get past Mr. Anker when Mr. Anker goes slowly, and in fact, he's not going to bother going slowly because he's going to head into the pit, so he can't make it to the end, as we suspected, so it is just a 2-stop strategy for Mr. Anker, and it will be soft tyres for the final 9 laps of this race.
I wonder how many positions he's going to gain from where he picks up from afterwards as well. So if Mr. Anker put it for softs, how are these hards going to do towards the end? Because obviously hards have a bit more life in them, but that's going to be lots of danger. So if I was Get-Owned, I would have a much better chance of winning this race. So maybe you can see Get-Owned is catching up to the guys who are on 15 lap old hard. So, you know, he can sense victory in his bones, I've got to say. Or maybe not, he thinks he could get a podium as well. But for some of these guys, I think Zones will probably have more of a chance of getting into the end compared to the others, because obviously he has cleaner air now. Whereas the others is going to be a bit more tricky due to the DRS trains, the dirty air, and obviously the temperature's getting hotter and hotter around this track. I mean, it's hard to comprehend really, but the 2 safety cars must have definitely helped some people's strategy, and some people it may have hindered them a little bit and not quite sure on what to do, because if it wasn't for that safety car being there, maybe they would have picked the hards a lot later than usual. But don't forget, some of these guys have just done soft to hard tyre strategy. That is difficult in itself. It's a gamble for making it into the end of the race, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't think Jonathan's going to get the move on Zone. He's a little bit too further back. Neither is Chris on Jonathan. So it's all just about getting those tyres to the end. And we can already see who is starting to struggle and who is gaining.
Yeah, someone starting to struggle a little bit is Hittinen. Oxygen going up the inside in the AlphaTauri down towards turn 1. Really nice defense from Hittinen around the outside, braking a lot later than the AlphaTauri in the end, but forced to give him space on the apex of turn 2 means that Oxygen will have the better run and the DRS as well up towards turn 4. Hittinen with the outside line, brakes later once again. Because of the nature of this corner, there's so much space on the outside, and because of that, Hittinen is able to get the power down sooner and back up into P8 he goes. Good defensive driving from the Racing Point. He needs to just try and hang on to this position. He's not going to gain any more positions up ahead. He just needs to look behind him now and to try and consolidate P8, and that's exactly what he's doing. But Oxygen is crawling all over the back of him at the moment.
Yeah, Oxygen doing very well indeed as well on the newer tyres, and I think that's what's hindering the Racing Point in P8. But Oxygen is going to prove why you could try and overtake him into turn 12, but he doesn't quite do it at the moment. But traffic is another important part of racing. If you don't get past the traffic easy enough, then you're going to lose so much time on your tyres. You're going to be held up a little bit as well. Don't forget Monaco as well is one of those tracks where you can't overtake. Zandvoort as well. That'll be coming up later in the calendar in a few races time. I think next time we'll be in Vietnam next week. One of the new tracks on the calendar, which I think most of the drivers hate, some of the drivers like. It's a love-hate trap, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Here we go. Syke on the inside of Warren into P4. Brilliant job from him as he's trying to nurse those tyres to the end. I think Dylan must be struggling right now on the Racing Point. He's trying to defend off the AlphaTauri. There's just so much battling happening on these final stages of the race. I don't know who to follow.
Yeah, at the moment, Hittinen still defending really nicely from Oxygen, but Oxygen, this time, he has the outside for turn 4. Last lap, it was Hittinen on the outside, and Hittinen made it work. This time, Hittinen's on the inside, and he's made the inside work. He just has that much better traction on the exit of turn 4, no matter where he puts the car, and as a result of that, he's still in P8, but what a lunge that is from Oxygen. Into the side of the racing point he goes. Bit of a rude one, and Hittinen gets the better exit anyway, so didn't come out looking terribly rosy for Oxygen in the end. I don't think he picked up any front wing damage, which is lucky for him, because he did make contact with the side of that racing point, getting just a little bit impatient there. Just wait another lap, Oxygen. Try to get into turn 1. But Hittinen is defending for his life, and he's doing it really, really well at the moment. Up towards the front, though, you mentioned Sight getting past DL Warren. It came at a major price because he had a much better run through the final corner, but he picked up his third warning through that corner as well. And as a result of that, he has a 3-second time penalty. So he got the position, but at the cost of that 3-second time penalty. So I don't think that's going to be worth it for him coming towards the end of this race. Chris is now looking to get a bit closer to the back of Jonathan in P2. The Alfa Romeo has been running comfortably with the pace of the Renault. Neither of them able to quite match Zones up the front, but he's not exactly causing a chasm between them. 1.4 seconds, the gap stabilizing at around there at the moment. But Chris is looking a little bit lively behind Jonathan, as once again Oxygen and Hittinen are battling, and once again it's Hittinen comfortably seeing off the Alpha Tower.
Yep, he is as well. Quite a few people gaining form positions. And Leonard, that is crucial. That could decide the win of this race if everyone fall off the cliff. He gets another penalty as well. I think a lot of people are getting penalties this race, and I think it's maybe due to the pressure of these temperatures. Those tyres are starting to struggle for some of these drivers, but we will see as the finals progress, as Mr. Anker is faster on those soft, the only driver out of the 15 still running on those softer tyres, and he's right on the back of the battle you were talking about of the Racing Point and Oxygen as well. He can still see him gaining quite a few positions. He's doing very well, and he can also see potentially getting maybe past Leonard and get owned as well. So maybe a podium is still not off the cusp of Anker yet, as he's on those fresher soft tyres. But again, he can't get held up too much either, because obviously the delta is incredibly the gaps are so much greater in Bahrain between the softs and the mediums, and the softs and the hards especially, compared to other tracks. So if Anker doesn't get a move on, as there was a bit of a swerve for Mr. Anker going towards the final corner there. But here he goes. Mr. Anker is going to get the DRS open on these two there as well, but Oxygen gets DRS too. So I think that is what's hindering him just a little bit as they go towards turn 1 there, but still quite close. Oxygen's made a little bit of a mistake. Mr. Anker says thank you very much. He capitalises on that as Anker gets in at 2P9. His next job is in P8, which I always butchered the name wrong. I do apologise on that. Don't forget, he's on 19 lap hard, so surely this is going to be easy picking for the Red Bull driver to get past him, but still not quite enough as we're on the final stages of this race.
Yeah, and I was about to say that Mr. Anker was in nightmare territory coming up behind Hittinen and Oxygen, who've been battling tooth and nail, and we've seen Oxygen getting really frustrated behind the back of Hittinen as well, and that's not the sort of driver you want to be coming up behind in the Red Bull, but Mr. Anker making it work really nicely. Lovely opportunistic move through turn 2 to get past Oxygen, and a little bit more patient, but into turn 10 he gets past Hittinen as well. Dispatched both of them over the course of half a lap, and on his way he goes. Great driving from Mr. Anker, who really would have been a contender for the win today if only he'd gone onto the hards when he came into the pit stop under that first safety car. It seems like everyone else realised that if you go onto the hards, you have at least a chance of making it to the end. Mr. Anker clearly wasn't aware of that, thought that everyone was going to go for a 2-stop, and went onto those medium tyres, and it is punishing him at the moment. He's going to be chasing down Leonard, but with a 5-second gap up to Leonard, and then another 5-second gap from Leonard to get owned as well. It's a huge mountain he has to climb.
Yeah, it is, but never say never for Mr. Anker, I've got to say. But yeah, it's a tall order, and it's like when you do exams, or if you climb up a real mountain, you've got a lot of obstacles to overcome, and yeah, it's going to be very tricky for him as we've got a few laps to go. Meanwhile, Get Owned has caught up to the back of those harder runners that have been on for quite a bit now. So if he could just get past, then potentially he could be ahead of them. Don't forget, Zyke has that penalty. Dylan might be on penalties as well that we don't know about, but we'll double check in a second as we head towards the end of this Grand Prix. Get Own, I think, just dropping back just a little bit, knowing that there could be danger any second, which is fair enough at this stage. Chris, meanwhile, is potentially on the cusp of getting P2 here if he can get past Jonathan, and what a story that would be for the Alfa Romeo driver after starting so... I'm just trying to see where he started, actually. He started P4, where Syke is, and we got yellow flag set to 1. Where's that? I think someone has just been letting through. I think it's Mirage as he goes into the pit lane. I do believe he wants to get fastest lap, but fair play to him. He's last anyway. He got nothing to lose, and trying to steal off that point away from the likes of Anchor, who is trying to get that point anyway. But it's a tough ask, of course, but look at this. The gaps are starting to close in between Chris and Jonathan, and also Get Owned, Dylan, Warren, and Jake. So let's see who's going to come on top with these battles then.
Yeah, Mr. Anchor has nowhere near enough pace on those 5-lap-old soft tyres. He gained a second only on Leonard over the course of that last lap, and being 5 seconds behind him, that'll mean he gets to him just as the race is coming to an end. So he might have a chance of claiming P7, of course. Leonard has a 3-second time penalty as well, so Mr. Anchor almost certainly will take P7, but I don't think he can hope for anything better than that, unfortunately. It does look like the pace of the front runners on those really old hard tyres is starting to become critically slow now, as we're seeing even Leonard catching up to them. He was comfortably 5 seconds behind Get Own, but as soon as Get Own got into the dirty air and is being held up by Warren and Syke up ahead, as soon as that happened, Leonard has been scything that gap down as well. So a lot of people really struggling now for pace. Chris seems to be in the best position with the front 3, as Zones is starting to lose just a little bit of time to Jonathan behind as well. The front 3, none of them have a time penalty. Syke has 1 3-second time penalty, and then DL Warren has 0 once again. So at the moment, it's only Syke in the top 5 who's going to be compromised by penalties here, and that could be critical for him. Chris still not really close enough to the back of Jonathan. He has DRS, and the Renault never does, but he's never quite close enough to think about making the move, and I don't know if he's just biding his time and being incredibly patient, or whether he just can't quite get the run on him. But looks like behind, Get Own has pulled off some incredible mega move to get past both Syke and DL Warren into turn 1.
I can't believe I missed that, to be honest, as well. But we could see Dylan trying to get past Syke as well. So Syke must be struggling on those hard tyres compared to Dylan, who's not doing too bad on those tyres. And I think that dirty air is costing them now. Get Owned may still have a chance of winning this race if these guys start to struggle. He's got to find 4 seconds between himself and the race leaders so far to actually get a sniff. And don't forget, I think it's not going to be that long before Get Owned catches up to Chris, so he could get a potential podium. So don't forget, Jonathan has that penalty. So, you know, get the one to pitted on the second safety car on those hards definitely helped in the gamble that Get Owned did for staying out just a little bit longer on those soft tyres to make sure the hards get to the end has worked a treat. He got a 3 pit stop. He's in 4th place. He's 1 shot away of getting a few places to a podium. He's dropped down 1 for now, but to be honest, he's definitely one of our drivers of the day. Leonard would have been there as well if he didn't get caught up by the battle with the Racing Point and the AlphaTauri, but you live and you learn, really, to be honest. Let's get on now, 2.6 now. But here we go, Chris on Jonathan in a 2 turn 1 zone sign struggle as well. Look at this. Jonathan was almost going to get the move there as well. We're in puncture territory at the moment. The tyres could go off the cliff at any moment, so they can't push too much. They can't make any mistakes going into the final couple of laps. Chris, meanwhile, does not get the move on Jonathan. This is allowing Get Owned to increase his gap just a little bit, close in the gap, I mean, as well. We got the Racing Point pitting, I think, so he knows that he can't get into the end, but again, he has nothing to lose so far. Everybody else taking the gamble and staying out, but the question is that gamble worth it for some of these drivers, or will they have to lose quite a few positions? We'll have to wait and see. I think Get Owned could just gain enough he needs to get that podium. He's found a few tenths per sector at this rate. He is on fire.
Any one of the top 4 could win this race. They all have no penalties. And Chris, I think, has more pace than Jonathan. And Jonathan and Chris both have more pace than Zones. Zones is the slowest one of the top 4 at the moment. And by far the fastest is Get Owned in 4th position. This is shaping up to be a fantastic final lap of this race, as they're all driving as though they're trying not to break eggs under the throttle because their rear tyres are going to be screaming at them right now. They want this race to be over so badly. Zones would be wishing so badly that he could come across the line here and the race would end. But he's got another lap to go. Here comes Jonathan. Now, can he keep it clean? He's DNF from almost every race so far. And now Zones back up the inside he goes, but he goes way too deep. And that's going to be Jonathan taking it around the outside of turn 2. Up into P1 he goes. Chris needs to get past Zones now. Zones is done in that racing point. His tyres are cooked. He's led the whole way, but now he has no hope of taking the win, I don't believe. Chris, can he get him? No, he can't through turn 4, and that's huge news for Jonathan, who might be able to win the race based on that fact and that fact alone. Chris doesn't dive it up in the inside into turn 8 either. He just wasn't close enough to the back of Zones. Zones struggles on the exit of turn 8. The turn 9 now, this is where Chris needs to make the move. He needs to be brave on the inside, and he's exactly that. Pushing the racing point wide, getting the better traction on the exit, but no, Zones fighting back, and all the time, Jonathan running away at the front. Into turn 11 they go now, with Zones on the outside, Ghetto just behind as well, lurking in the wings. I think he's left it just a little bit too late, and Chris makes the move up into P2.
This is proving to be an installing final lap of this race. Get Owned is still on a sniff of a podium. Zone's making a mistake. Here comes Get Owned's chance to potentially get a podium. Here he goes. What a brilliant swoop up into P3. Can potentially get Chris as well. Who's going to get the win of this race? It's all going to come down to who's going to get their tyres into good nicks. Jonathan is going to win on track, and he takes the win. Brilliant stuff. Chris takes P2. Get Owned gets P3, and Zones, without that mistake, he would have got P3 or 3-2. He was on shot for the win, but I think if he would have pitted just like what Get Owned did, he would have had a shot of winning, but unfortunately he didn't. But Jonathan gets his first win of the season. I thought he got a penalty there earlier on in the race, but it might have been a stop go that I saw. That was probably why, but that's exactly what he needed after a poor start to the season. He must be on cloud 9 right now. Brilliant job by the Renault driver.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy for him. I was very critical of his drive last time out because I think he really went over the line with battling and didn't keep his nose clean there. Every other race before that, he just got really unlucky to retire. He had a huge amount of really unfortunate incidents that were not really his fault. And then last time out, it was his fault when he was battling for the win, but he's shown time and time again that he has the pace to win these races here in ORL Split B. And he has finally done it now on the 5th race of the season. And that will get his championship charge underway. And with so many people with such spotty attendance, we can't count him out towards the end of this season either. I think Mr. Anchor is actually going to hold on maybe to top spot in the championship, with Zones falling all the way down to 4th on the final lap. But yeah, and Zones looked like he was so dominant throughout the whole race. But he was pushing too hard. We said it at one point, that is Zones, the gap he was building to Jonathan. Was he pushing his tyres too hard? The answer, yes, he was. His tyres were in much worse condition than even the other guys on the same age of tyres. And that came back to bite him hard in the end, as he lost out on his chance even for a podium and what should have been a nailed-on victory for the Racing Point.
But that is the thing about Bahrain, isn't it? Tyres get hot too quickly, the tyres wear out quickly as well. These are the track where the hards don't last as long compared to other tracks. So Zones took the gamble, it didn't pay off. Jonathan took the gamble and it paid off for him. So it just shows it's more about maybe about the setup and about the skill. Jonathan did what he needed to do, takes the win from 5th on the grid. Amazing. Chris, a really good job for him as well. P2, Get Owned in P3. I don't know who to get for driver of the day. We'll discuss that in a minute. We got Warren in 5th place with Zoned in 4th. Mr. Anchor in 6th after a great comeback to the end on those soft tyres. We've got Sight, then Leonard, Iceman and Frosty. Then we got Hyan in 11th. We got Fuocious in 12th. Then we got Capel, Oxygen, who getting a lot of penalties there, and Mirage. And your non-finishers are Felix and Nurtex. And that has been a really good Bahrain Grand Prix for ORL Tier 2 Split B. And to be honest, I really enjoy myself there. And I hope these drivers keep up the good work, because it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and that was so much cleaner than we saw last time as well. With so many battles that were really respectful on track there. And that's the opposite of what we saw in Australia last time out. So I'm really glad they have managed to get their heads screwed on properly for this race and give us absolutely thrilling entertainment over the course of that one. It came to a head right at the perfect moment, right at the end of the race. One more lap and Get Owned wins that race. There's no doubt about that. But as it happened, Jonathan and Chris were able to hang on, and Chris will be gutted that he wasn't able to get Jonathan because he was so close behind him for so long, and he had more pace than the Renault for the vast majority of the race, but he could never quite get close enough in the traction zones. And by the time he did get close enough, Zones was in the way himself in the racing point, and he had to pass the Polish driver, and that meant that he couldn't catch up to Jonathan in time. And as a result, it was the Renault driver who won the day. And no question, Jonathan is my driver of the day today. I don't think anyone else outperformed him out there today. Mr. Anker did a great job to manage P6 despite his compromised strategy. But let's not forget that he himself compromised that strategy. Everyone else knew that it was better just to go onto the hards. He went onto the mediums. It didn't work. That was his own mistake.
Yeah, exactly. I think I got to agree with you, Jacob, on driver of the day for Jonathan. He's had such bad luck from the start of the season, had a few DNFs, and that has not let him get to him today. He has shown why he deserves to be in ORL. Absolutely fantastic. He let go of what he did in the last few races and kept it clean pretty much for the whole race, and he made some fantastic moves as well. So I'm sure everybody will be proud of that. I'm very proud of him, and he's given the wake-up call that he needs, and it's finally good to see an underdog take that victory in Bahrain, really, and showing really that it's about trying to keep your tyres in good nap, and he definitely did that today. So yeah, I have to agree with you. That has been the Bahrain Grand Prix for ORL Split B Tier 2, if you like to call it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be back soon. I don't know which day it is, because I said Thursday last time and I got that completely wrong. So I'm just going to say we'll see you next time for the Vietnam Grand Prix. Thanks to Jacob once again for joining me alongside. It's been great as always.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much for having me.
And we will see you next time, whatever day it is, Thursday or Sunday, whatever, for the Vietnam Grand Prix. Have a good evening and good night.